Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I'm the Customer Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Payroll Year-End and 1099 Processing Procedures in Sage 100, presented by Monica Boyer. Before we get started, let's go over some housekeeping items. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise to a minimum. However, throughout the webinar, you can submit any questions you have. If you'd like to submit a question, look for the questions section in your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll answer all questions at the end of the presentation. I'd also like to make you aware that you're able to change the layout of your screen view at the top of your GoToWebinar box. You can choose to hide the cameras, focus on different parts of the presentation, and zoom in or out to get a better view of the screen. We're also recording this presentation, and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees, as well as those who registered but were unable to attend. And finally, we would appreciate your participation in our closing survey. With that said, we're thrilled you've taken some time out of your busy day to be with us on this webinar. SWK is here to help you fulfill your vision of a smarter and easier way to run your business by providing you tools, support, software, and industry knowledge whenever you need it. So don't hesitate to ask any questions you have while we have an expert present. And as a quick reminder, we're constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels. Check us out and give us a follow on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube so you don't miss out. Okay, that's enough from me. Let's hand it over to Monica for the main event.
Thanks, Courtney. Hi, everybody. This is Monica. Can you believe it's year-end time again? It seems like this year has flown by. We're going to talk today, as Courtney said, about payroll year-end, 1099 processing in Sage 100. So here's our agenda today. We're going to talk about some key information and dates. As you guys probably remember from previous presentations or previous years, there's some information such as what version you have to be on and all of that we're going to go through. We're going to talk about where to get our 1099s and our W-2 forms that we need to print, about how to verify our data in accounts payable and payroll. We're going to talk about payroll year-end order of events. So how, what happens when you have to print W-2s, accounts payable 1099 processing, and payroll W-2 processing. So we're going to walk through both of those in the software. So here's that key information. So Sage has made some updates about what they expect or what you can expect as far as versions that you need to be on in order to process 1099s or payroll W-2s. So with payroll, there is typically a payroll tax update, and we'll talk about that when we go into the software, but it's maintained by this Sage Tax Cloud, and those updates are pushed down to your system, and you can check in payroll utilities if you have an update that's present. A lot of times when you're doing key things in payroll, it will prompt you for that update as well, so you'll know if there's an update available, but there is a way to check, and we'll look at that in a little bit. Sage 100 payroll, you're going to need to be on 2.24 and Sage 100 version 2020 or later in order to process your W-2s this year. This payroll update, the 2.24, is going to be released at some point in this month. It has not been released yet. Accounts payable 1099s, you'll have to be on Sage 100 2020 or later. So of course, if you're not on 2020 yet, you can talk to myself or your Sage 100 consultant about upgrading or getting to where you need to be in order to produce those documents. There is a link here to that announcement Sage made about being on version 2020, and that's in the presentation, and I believe Courtney's going to send that out after the presentation, so you'll have that link as well. Where to get your forms. So Sage has a nice tax forms site, and it's located at the community hub, and that just tells you where to get forms and all of those kinds of things. I'll show you that hub in a couple minutes and what it looks like and the information that's in there. But there is a direct link to sagechecks.com, which is the place that you can purchase your 1099 or W-2 forms. So when you go into there, you'll see at the top in the middle, there's something called tax forms and business forms. If you click on that, you'll be able to choose 1099s or W-2s. And then on the left-hand side, you'll be able to narrow your search by your software. So you're going to choose Sage 100, 2016 and newer, eFile service, etc. So you'll just choose that option, and then it'll bring up the forms that are appropriate for Sage 100 in your version, and you can purchase those right there. So when we're in accounts payable, when we're going to do 1099s, we really need to verify our data. So there's a few things that we would normally review prior to processing 1099s. You're going to make sure your information and company maintenance is accurate. And I'll show you that in a little bit, what I mean about that. Check your 1099 year and AP options, make sure it's on the correct and appropriate year. And then you're going to verify your 1099 data. So you can do that in vendor maintenance. You can use the payment history report that I'm showing right here to show the 1099 vendors only, if you prefer. That'll give you your totals. You can make sure everything looks okay. You can also use this report to verify your data when you're running those 1099s. And remember, this data can be changed in the 1099 printing window. But keep in mind, and I'll probably say this a couple times, that when you change the data in the 1099 printing window, and you'll see where that is in a little bit if you haven't seen it before, when you change it there, it does not change in Sage 100. So you'll want to make note of any changes that you make there that are permanent that you would need to enter in Sage 100. So payroll, we did verify data as well. And typically with payroll, you're verifying that data throughout the years, running your quarterly reports and all of those kinds of things. But the following reports can be used to verify your W-2 data at year end as well. So usually I use the quarterly tax report or the check history report. That check history report can be run for the entire year. So there's a date selection there you can choose from. And you can also obviously keep these reports on hand so that you can verify your W-2 data is accurate when you get to the W-2 screen. So you probably know, if you've worked in Sage 100 before, that Sage 100 1099s and W-2s are processed by a company called Atrix. There's a link to it from Sage 100, but when you go to print your W-2s and 1099s, you're actually in the Atrix software. So that's why I mentioned a few times to make sure you're verifying your data and making sure that that's accurate from Sage 100 to Atrix. So payroll year-end order of events. So there's some timing sensitive things I would say for payroll when you're running W-2s. So in your old year, the year that you're going to be running 1099s for, you're going to enter your last payroll of the year, you're going to process it, print it, and post it, right? And you'll do that before you close your year and before you do your updates for your taxes for the following year. And then we typically will guide you or advise you to install the year-end release. So there's usually a year-end tax release for W-2s, which will be in your payroll updates, so you'll be able to update those. Then we would generate our year-end forms. So after we do the year-end update, after the last payroll has been processed in the prior year, we do recommend making a backup. So if you want to make a copy of your company, to save for, just in case there's any sort of issues, we usually make a backup, and then we download and update the taxes before the new year payroll is processed, but after the old year payroll is processed. So that'll be the tax updates for the new year. You can enter time entry if you're using Timekeeper or any kind of time card solution. You can enter that at any time. And then obviously in the new year, after you've updated your taxes, you're going to process the new payroll year, and after you've closed your payroll year. So you're going to close the year, you're going to process your payroll before you process the payroll for the new year, of course, but after you make your backup, so that you have a good backup of that year. We can, if you don't know how to make a copy of your company in Sage 100, let me know in the questions. I can go through that. I hadn't planned on it, but I can go through that for you if you don't know how to make that backup. If you want more information, Sage has this community hub, and that community hub has all kinds of information about taxes, reports and forms, and those kinds of things. We're going to look at those as well. But right now, I'm going to bring you into the software and show you how to process those 1099s and W-2s. So I'm going to pull over Sage 100, and we're going to take a look at that. So I'm going to process payroll W-2s first. So I'm going to go into my payroll demo company to show you. So typically I'm going to run my reporting in my payroll module and determine that everything is okay. Of course, you can look in employee maintenance, you can look in your employees and make sure that everything is okay there. You'll notice that when I clicked on that, it said to me a payroll tax update is ready to be installed. Do you want to install the update? I downloaded this earlier. Normally you'll be prompted to download it first and then install it. But if one is available, you can install it and it'll just take a second. It already says the payroll tax update has been installed. And you can always review the payroll report, tax update report on the utilities menu to see what has changed. And you can also review a guide online and there's a link there. So that's as simple as that for updating, installing an update if you haven't seen that before. And most of you probably have. We can always check the pay history to review information for the year that we're in or the year we're processing W-2s for. And of course, the reports, your quarterly tax report or your check history report will give you the information you need for your W-2s. So when you're ready to process your W-2s, once you've verified all your data, you're going to go to Payroll Period End, Federal and State Tax Reporting. Oh, it looks like I already have that open, so let me cancel that and restart. Okay, so Payroll Period End, Federal and State Tax Reporting. What's going to come up is it's going to look like this, and you choose the form that you're going to print. So if you have state forms that you print, you would want to choose state up here, and then choose the form that you wish to print. I'm going to do the federal right now, and then I'm going to choose my form that I'd like to print. So if you scroll down, you'll see some information, and you'll notice this says 2022 W-2 because I'm in a demo company that's 2022. Obviously, yours would be 2023. And there's other reports here, right? So your 941, any specific reports related to different things you may have to file are here, and you can print them as well. You can also print your W-2 history. So if you've run W-2s and you need to review those, you can always look at your W-2 history and run them from there. When we're doing them the first time, we're going to pick the appropriate W-2 form that we have to print. We're going to say select, and then it's going to go through and verify some of our data. It looks like, let's see here. Yep, it's going to process my employees. So I just clicked proceed at the bottom, and it's going to process those employees. So right now, Sage 100 is communicating with Atrix. So it's going to go out to the Atrix software, grab the information that it needs, and all of that, and it's going to process those federal and state tax reporting. And once it pops up on the screen, you'll see it. It kind of looks like a spreadsheet kind of thing. It's still working through the process here. Okay, so here's what it looks like. So it's going to walk through this process and ask you to verify some information. So on the left-hand side, you'll see in blue, verify employee information. We look through all our employees. So what is highlighted in blue in this secondary grid or the grid below is what it's asking you to verify. So it wants me to verify all of these employees and their addresses, their zip code, their country code, etc. So as long as everything looks good there, I'm going to say next. Now, if it did not look good, or if an address was missing or something like that, it would be highlighted in red and you would be asked to fill in that information. You can fill that information in this spreadsheet. So for example, if I needed to change something, I could change it here if I needed to. But just remember that this does not change your data in Sage 100. So if an address was missing for an employee, you might want to fill that out in Sage 100 as well. So now it's asking me to look at the additional information, make sure that's okay. And then I click next again. So it's basically walking you through all this information and asking you to verify. So you'll see here all these, it wants me to verify this information. So if I had printed my reports, I could verify based on those reports, just run through and check that everything looks appropriate. And then I'll click next again. And now it wants us, so this particular company has a bunch of states that it reports for. You may or may not have state reporting or multiple states like this company does, but you'll see there's totals at the top. So you could run some state-driven reporting in payroll to verify this information as well. And then we say next as long as everything is okay. Now, you may see warnings like this. So And when it shows you the warning, it highlights in yellow the items that it's warning about. And it'll say this kind of thing, please complete or correct the yellow fields, local wages found, but no state wages found. In this case, if you knew it was correct, you could say continue without correcting, or if you knew it was inaccurate, you could go back and correct that. And it's usually, I usually see these messages related to specific state items. And sometimes clients have told me that, oh yeah, it is correct. I have to do that for such and such a reason. And then we'll just say continue without correcting. So now it says verify all other data. Basically, it's just kind of a last look at all your data before you go ahead and print those W-2s. So then I'm going to say next again. I'm going to assume all the data is okay here. I've got a couple things that are wrong here that could potentially need to be created or need to be corrected, but a lot of this is related to demo data, so I don't worry about it too much. You would know, obviously, if there was an issue like this that you needed to change something. And then I'm going to continue. So Atrix as a service offers you the opportunity to e-file your documents for you. It can e-file all of your reporting to the government. It can mail all your W-2s to your employees, all of those kinds of things. And you'll see here it says $260 per recipient, and all of the information here will tell you what is included. So if you want to e-file, you can. Sage 100 with Atrix always offers a way for you to print everything for free. So keep that in mind. If you prefer to just print them and do everything yourself, you can do that. But this is the $260 per employee essentially, and they'll do everything for you. So when I click next and go to the next screen, they're really trying to sell you on their e-filing, of course. So it's always going to default to the complete W-2 e-filing service. They mail them the next business day. This is your total cost based on your number of employees, $24.95 for the 17 employees I have, right? So that might be worth it to me. But if not, and I want to print them, which we're going to do for today's purposes, I'm going to click the other options area. So I'm clicking off this cost, and I'm going to tell it what I want to do. I'm going to print everything, and then it'll still try to get you to e-file W-2s and W-3s with the state and federal. I'm going to uncheck that so that we can print them, and you'll notice my total is 0. And then I'm going to print my federal W-2s and W-3s. If you have state W-2s and forms that need to be submitted, you'll want to make sure to click this print state ones. I'm not going to do that for this case because it takes longer when I was checking it out, but it will, you can print those as well. Rather than e-file. So I have everything set to print. Once you have everything set to print, your total should be 0 if that's what you want. So I'm verifying my total 0. So I'm printing everything this time rather than e-filing, and I'm going to click next. Of course, they're going to try to continue to sell you the e-file service. So if you don't want the e-file service, you click next. If you changed your mind, you could click yes here and e-file everything. So it wants to review my data. So this is what it's going to print. It's going to print my federal W-3 or W-2 and W-3. It's going to print my employee W-2 and the notice that goes on the back of those employee W-2s. And it's going to print my employer W-2s. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. And then it's going to show me each form and allow me to print those forms. Two things I should mention. When you first log into these e-filing services, either for payroll or for accounts payable, it will probably prompt you to update your forms to the current level. And it's an automatic update kind of thing. So you're just going to choose automatic update, and then it'll be a walkthrough kind of wizard where you just click next and finish. Those updates I did in advance of this webinar because it's a little timely. So just prepare for that. It took mine about 7 minutes to run the updates for the forms. So you may see that comes through. And if there's any updates to the W-2 forms that or the 1099 forms that the government makes at the last minute, that will also prompt for an update. So whenever you see that prompt come up saying that you need an update on your forms, just go ahead and do that update and walk through it. All right, these are our W-2s. So you'll see here, this is our 4 up at the top. The very top, it says report 1 of 5. This is our employee W-2. So these are the ones we're going to be giving to our employees. You'll notice they print 4 up on a page, and the actual form itself will be perforated. It'll be blank for up on a page and perforated appropriately, because it actually prints all the boxes and everything at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and say next step. Oh, before I do that, I should show you that up here at the top, there's 19 pages. So I can scroll through the pages and see each employee's W-2s. And then I'm going to click next, and it'll say, would you like to print it now? So obviously, if you're ready to print them, you're going to say yes. I'm going to say no, and we're going to move on to the next form. So up at the top, it says report to employer W-2. So this is your copy of the W-2s. And when that comes up, so this is our copy. You know it's your copy because there's more than one employee per page. And this one is only 5 pages long for our 17 employees. And then we're going to hit next. And it'll say, please insert the 4-part blank perforated W-2 paper you purchased. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm not actually going to print this, but this kind of prompts you to print it. So I'll cancel it here. And then we'll move on to our next form. Our next form is our 941 for our W-2s. So that's our federal reporting that goes along with our W-2s to the government. And you'll see that that comes through filled out here. If for some reason there was information that was not filled out for any of these reports, it would prompt you and let you know that you are missing that information and let you fill it out in here. So just if there was anything weird missing, it would prompt you. Would you like to print the 941 W-2 now? I'm going to say no. Obviously, you would say yes. So every time you hit next, it'll prompt you to print the next form, and so on and so forth. You can't really go wrong in here, obviously, because it just moves you through the whole entire process. So here's my 941. So I have seen here where information has been missing, you know, like maybe a phone number or something, and it'll prompt me and I'll type in the phone number. This information, though, is located in company maintenance. So when we go to Library Master Main Company Maintenance, our W-2s are pulling information from, and I'm in version 2023 of Sage 100, but it's either pulling from the main tab in some older versions or the additional tab. So all of this information, if it's filled in, will come through onto your 1099s. Or your W-2s in this case. So here's our W-3. I'm going to say next. I'm not going to print it. Obviously, you would print it if you were printing those. And then it's going to move on to the next one. And I think the next one is the notice. It is. So this gets printed on the back of the W-2s that the employees receive. So you would just obviously flip them over depending on your printer and put them in there so that it prints on the back. If you're like me, it might take you a couple tries to get the printer right, but hopefully you'll get it on the first try. Would you like to print the W-2 notice now? I'm going to say no. Obviously, you would say yes. After that, you're all set. Your payroll filing is about done. Of course, Atrix is going to try to sell you one more time the options related to history. So we can save these. We can e-file or print the incomplete W-2s. We can correct them. So this would be actions that you might use if you had to correct a W-2 later on. So we've completed our US W-2 filings, and we can do a different action here if we wanted to. I'm going to tell it to close. We're essentially done with our W-2s. If we wanted to get back to them again, we can go to payroll and go to federal and state tax reporting, and we can run those again. So for example, I ran them already, so I can go to my W-2 history and I can run this. So you'll see over on the right, it gives you the explanation. Select this option to correct, add, delete, reprint, or look up your W-2 information. So if you needed to see a prior year's information, you could see that there. Okay, so that is payroll reporting. We're going to talk a little bit now about accounts payable. So in accounts payable, when I go to vendor maintenance, I can always, let me change my company. So I have to look at a different company for this information. So we're going to go to the ABX company. This is the one that's set up for payables. So we're going to go to vendor maintenance, and we can look at our 1099 vendor information. So on the additional tab on the right-hand side is your 1099 information. So if this vendor is a 1099 vendor, you'll see over on the right-hand side, some of this information will be filled out. You can always check your 1099 history by year. I'm doing 2020 in this company. It's just because it's demo data. Obviously yours will be 2023, but here's my non-employee compensation for this particular vendor. This, as long as I have security access to change this, I can change this here. So if I said, oh, this is wrong, it's supposed to be 621039, I can change that and update that. That will forward to Atrix for your 1099 so that they print appropriately. So you can go through and verify that all your information is in here that is needed. You'll notice that we have a DBA name now. So if the name that you use for your vendor is different than what they need the 1099 issued in, that's where you would put this DBA name and any additional addresses. So this information will then forward to the 1099 rather than the address on the main tab or the name of the vendor. Of course, we have the non-employee compensation, but we also still have miscellaneous interest and dividend for those 1099s that fall into those categories. So once we make sure all of that is okay, and of course we can run a report to look at that as well. We can run the history report and just look at our 1099s like we looked at before. But when we want to print our 1099s, on the reports menu, we go to Form 1099 tax reporting. And very similar to the W-2s, it'll pop up this screen here. Now, if you haven't printed 1099s or W-2s in the past, there is a separate install for the federal tax reporting or for the federal and state tax reporting for 1099s and W-2s. That has to be installed on your workstation as well. So if you click either of these options in Payroll to do W-2s or in Accounts Payable, the Form 1099 tax reporting, if you click on that and you get a message that it's not installed, it probably isn't. So you can reach out to myself or your Sage 100 consultant to get that installed for you or to assist someone with installing that. If it opens like this, like mine does, then you'll know that you have that installed on your workstation and you're good to go. So with 1099s, we could print multiple kinds of reporting here. So you can choose the form type that you're printing. So obviously, if you have dividend, interest, miscellaneous, you'll run through this. Let's say you had all 4 kinds of 1099s. You're going to run through this process 4 times to print 4 separate reports based on the type of 1099 vendors that you have. I have non-employee compensation vendors, so I'm going to just print these for the sake of our demonstration, but they all print pretty much the same way. So there's a minimum year to date, and that there's a minimum for 1099s, whatever that may be for the year, I think maybe $600. You'll put that minimum in this minimum year to date button, and that will allow for Atrix to not select those under that limit. Your name and address and everything comes over from your company maintenance if it's filled in, as well as your federal ID number. If your address isn't filled in company maintenance for some reason, it'll prompt you to fill it in here. If for some reason your federal ID number is not there, it'll back you out of this printing and have you fix that in company maintenance. And then I'm going to say accept. And it's going to go through the process of coming to that Atrix wizard. So right now, Sage 100 is communicating with Atrix and getting all the information into that software so that we can see our data and print our 1099s. Should be coming up soon, and here it is. So our 1099 setup wizard, do we want to do a test drive or do we want to process our 1099s? The test drive just doesn't allow you to do the e-filing. It'll essentially let you walk through everything and print your reports, but it won't let you do any of the e-filing. I'm going to do the no thanks start processing. So you see the e-filing information as we walk through. Need to verify my tax ID number that this is okay. If it's not okay, I can't change it here. I have to cancel out and change it in company maintenance in Sage 100 and come back into the wizard. This is, do you use multiple TINs or EINs, employee identification numbers, or tax identification numbers for your company? So if you use multiple companies in Sage 100 with the same tax ID number and you need to combine those 1099s, you would say, yes, I use multiple 1099 data files. And then it will prompt you for which data files that you want to use. It'll actually prompt you to combine this data file with another data file. It's not very common, but so I'm going to close out of here and we'll go back in and do the wizard the regular way. But if you do have that, you can combine those files after you run them both. So I'm just going to go back to that wizard again and we'll continue on. If you have any further questions on that combination thing, let me know. You actually run them separately and then you go ahead and combine them using that little wizard saying that you're combining them. Oh, it's just taking a minute. It kind of ended here. You have to pick the right form though. I tend to do that a lot, so hopefully you don't. So I'm just going to let this pop up. It's coordinating with Atrix, right? It's going out there and getting all that data prepared. Does take a minute, depending on how many 1099s you have and all of that. Here's our wizard. So I'm going to process my W-2s. My tax ID is okay. I'm going to do a single 1099 data file. It'll bring in all my information from company maintenance over here. If I don't have the information that's needed, it will prompt me to fill it in. So I think the name is needed. So if I hit next, it'll tell us this is a required field and you would just fill it in here. Of course, noting that you should probably fill it in company maintenance so you don't have to fill it in manually next time. I'm filing for my company or employer or a third party. So I'm doing my company and employer. If I have any state and local tax items, they will show up here. So this list will be populated based on your vendors and the selections that you made for your vendors. If for some reason something was missing, you can use the buttons on the right to add them. This company does not have to report 1099s to the states. So I'm just going to say next. Do you have any recipients who elected to receive only 1099 forms electronically? You could say yes here. And if you say yes here, it will prompt you to electronically send those files through Atrix. Do we want to truncate social security numbers? I usually do. If there's not a tax ID number, do you want zeros to post or leave them blank on the forms? It does, whichever is your preference. And then I say next, and it's going to prepare that spreadsheet like we saw with our W-2s when we did the payroll side of things. So here's my spreadsheet. I'll start walking through here, verify the tax ID number. So it wants me to verify. Note those two are missing. So when I click next, it's going to tell me that's a required field for 1099, so I have to fill that in. So I'm going to say go back and correct, and I'm going to just fill those in. If you don't put it in the right format, you may have seen when my audio was off, it will prompt you to put it in again. You know, it'll tell you that it's not in the right format. So now that that's corrected, everything's in blue. I'm going to click next and it'll say to check my FEIN. So federal ID number versus a social security number is what this is related to. So your federal ID number is the first three because it's companies. It's not a tax ID like a social security number. So those who have social security numbers, this box should be unchecked. And those that are companies and they have a federal number, that box should be checked. So I'm going to click next. So it found another error. The recipient first and last name is required when it's a social security number. So I'm going to go back and put the Roger Lerner's name in here. So his last name is Lerner, Roger, and we're going to put that in there to correct. So now everything looks okay there. And then I'm going to click next. It wants us to manage those addresses. Click next again. A zip code cannot be blank, must be numeric, it must be formatted in a certain way. So something's wrong with our data. Just remember, I'm going to go back and correct this, but remember to correct this in Sage 100 as well, so that that information the next time comes through appropriately. And I'm going to say next. Wants us to check our income boxes over here. Everything's good. Notice there's a total at the top, so you can verify that with any reporting. Your state filing. If we were running state reports, there would be a state withholding area, but we don't have that, so we're going to say next. And then, of course, it'll come to this. Atrix offers 1099 reporting options, $260 per recipient. When I click next, it'll ask me if I want the complete 1099 filing service. It'll cost me $24.95 based on my vendors. I'm going to say no because I'm printing everything. So if I click other options, I can click to print everything. And if I uncheck the eFile, because I don't want to do that right now, it'll give me this message, that the governments are recommending that you eFile everything so that its processing time is more is quicker, obviously, and so that it eliminates any delays. Of course, you can still choose to do what you want to do unless you're required to eFile for some reason. But I'm just going to print them. So once everything says 0 down here, you can just print them. You don't have to worry about any of the e-filing or anything like that. And then these are the benefits of the complete 1099 e-file service. So if you opt out, it's going to pop this up trying to sell you that e-file service. I'm going to say next. We're not going to e-file at this time. And I'm not going to print California. If you do have to print it, it'll just print the additional reports needed for that. And I'm going to do just the federal at this time. So this is what's going to print: the 1099 NEC, my 1096, my recipient 1099s, the instructions, and then my payer 1099. So I'm going to click next. Just like we saw with payroll, it's going to come through and show us our forms here in a second. So here's our 1099 NEC forms. Right there. And then we're going to click next. Do I want to print them? I'm not going to print them right now because for this demo purposes, we're just viewing them. So I'm just going to move on. Here's my 1096 filled out for me. I'm not going to print it at this time. And then here's my recipient 1099. So you know that it's your recipient. It's printing 4 or up. You'll have the perforated pages and you'll print on those. That's your front page. And then eventually it'll prompt you to print the guidance on the back of that. Here's our payer 1099 NEC. So what we pay off of, what we pay with or send in with our payment or in our 1096. And then I'm going to say no to print that at this time. And here's going to be the instructions that we should print on the back of our 1099s for our recipients. I'm not going to print them at this time. And that's going to close our window, our wizard, and it's going to bring up our history options. So we can, save this into history. We can start over, which would need to clear our past actions. We can correct our 1099s here, etc. And you'd get back to that. So if you have to make a correction, you get back to that by going to the Form 1099 tax reporting and choosing to view your history, and you can make any corrections there if there are any corrections that are needed. Once you finish with your filing, it's going to ask you, do you want to increment the default 1099 calendar year field in the accounts payable options window to the next calendar year? So when you finally complete this, you can say yes, and then your default will be the following year when you have to print them. I'm going to say no right now, but I do want to visit there for a second. So under accounts payable setup, accounts payable options, you'll see there's a 1099 reporting area here, and it'll have a year as well. So this year is obviously related to the forms that it prints. Prior to 2020, we didn't have the NEC forms, so we would just have the miscellaneous 1099. So you want to make sure, even before you start, that this calendar year is set to 2023. You know, when you're doing this in January or whatever, you'll make sure that that's set to 2023 so that it loads the appropriate forms for you. Finally, I did want to show you a couple of the web pages from Sage. So this is, let's see here, let me pull this up. So this is one of the links in my presentation today, but this is the community hub for Sage, and this is your year-end articles. If you go back here to the year-end center, which actually this is the link that I put in the presentation, you'll see the FAQs, your checklists, updates, anything like that, you can access directly from here. So if you wanted to see, for example, payroll and AP year-end checklists, which are available from Sage, you can walk through this little wizard here. Here's your workflow, print your quarterly reports, run your updates. If you have to do affordable care stuff, set that up, and then links to all of the appropriate information in there. So this original, the year-end center link is in the presentation, as well as there's one about reports and forms, and that is this that I put in there as well. And I got there from the year-end page as well. I chose reports and tax forms, and then this will tell you what forms do I use to print W-2s, 1099s, and 1095. So you can just click on the link and it'll prompt you with the appropriate article. How to purchase them will take you to the Sage Checks area. So I would click the Sage Checks link. So all of those links can be invaluable when you're looking through, looking to process your year-end stuff if you want those checklists. I also put a link in for this, and this is about the 1099 compatibility for Sage 100, what version you have to be on of both Sage 100. So you have to be, if you're on 2018 or 19, you have to upgrade to a supported version of Sage 100, and you have to be using Sage Payroll 2.24 to get the appropriate information. All right. Awesome. That is the end of my presentation, so I'll turn it over to Courtney and see if we have any questions.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Monica. We definitely have some questions. I'd also, again, like to thank everyone for bearing with us while we dealt with those audio and technical issues. Truly is a live webinar. So, Monica, the first thing I want to ask you is, how does someone check which version of Sage 100 they are on?
Very important. So if you're in Sage 100, you can go to Help and then About Sage 100 over on the right, and that'll tell you what version you're on right there.
Great, thank you. And the next one is, in the next 2 months, will we have to have an update done, if we don't have an update done, will we not be able to print W-2s? So, you know, I think that's when you were talking about the versions you have to be on.
Yep, that is correct. So you do have to have the updates in order to process the W-2s and be on the appropriate version.
Awesome. And if that applies to you, definitely reach out to your SWK rep or let us know that you need some follow-up in the post-webinar survey, and we'll be sure to reach out and help you get that figured out. Next question is about the Atrix service. So can you tell us some more about the Atrix service? Is there additional cost, and how can someone get it?
Sure. So the Atrix service comes with Sage 100. It's a contract that Sage has contracted with Atrix to provide the 1099 forms and W-2 forms, provide that whole processing piece. Sage used to offer processing without Atrix, and it got a little messy, like all the changes in forms, they were having trouble with keeping up. Atrix is a company that solely does this kind of thing, 1099s and W-2s for all different kinds of softwares and companies. They also have like a separate where you can enter your information, for example, and do it. So when Sage contracted with Atrix, part of the deal is that it comes with Sage 100, and you can print those always for free. So if you want to just print everything, there is an install required for your workstation in order to allow that printing to happen or allow that wizard to run. So if you try to click on either the 1099 reporting or processing your W-2s and you can't get into that wizard typically it's because that has not been installed. And you can reach out to your customer account manager or your consultant for Sage 100, and they can get that on there for you.
Great. The next question is about the new versions and updates, and I think I have the clarifier here, but correct me if I'm wrong, Monica, there is a specific version you need to be on to be able to run, these W-2s,
Yes.
to print the W-2s, but there is also a separate payroll release that's coming out this month. So the version you need for those printing is currently available, but there's another payroll coming out later this month that's not for that.
Yes, so that's the Payroll 2.24. 2.23 is the latest one right now. And if you go to Help About, you can see your payroll version as well. So when 2.24 comes out, that will need to be installed in order to have the latest updates for your W-2 reporting.
And when that version released, you'll receive the notification, and SWK will send something out as well to let you know that that's available with our year-end help emails.
Yep.
Can you give some more information on how to do a backup, company backup for some of our newer users?
Yes. So in Sage 100, and you would have to have security access to these areas. So you may have to talk to whomever manages your security. But under Library Master Company Maintenance, so for example, I'm in company ABX. If I want to make a copy of this or a backup, I can call this, maybe I'm going to call it BAB, like a backup. Backup ABX company. So you're creating a new company that's going to maintain your backup or hold your copy of your company. And I usually name them appropriately, right? Or let's say before new payroll year or something like that. So you can name it so that you know what it is. We need to give it a company type. In the newer versions of Sage 100, if you have a company type field, you have to assign a company type. So you can just call this an archive. The reason that there's a company type in Sage 100 now is because there is some security preventing users from overriding live companies and archive companies. So I would make this one an archive, and then over on the right, you're going to say copy. It'll give you this message. The company record must be saved before data can be copied. Do you want to save it? Yes, that's just the setup of this company that's being saved. The next part is really important. You get to this copy data screen, and you just want to make sure that your source company is your live company and your destination company is your backup company. So my source would be ABX, my destination would be my backup. I have had clients, unfortunately, copy their test company over their live company. So you just want to always be sure to be going in the right direction. Source company is where you're copying from, destination company where you're copying to. I usually just copy all the modules. You could just do like GL payroll if you wanted to, something like that, but I like to do all of them. And then I'm going to say proceed, and then it'll ask if you want to copy all the data files, and I'm going to say yes. Now it's going to go through a little copy process, and then it's done. So now this BAB company is a backup, and it's available to me in my company list. And as long as I have the security rights to access it, I can go ahead and access this, and it's going to be an exact copy of your current company. And then, I should probably note, when you go to upgrade Sage 100, consultants will always check with you and say, do you want to bring those backup companies over? Some clients choose to do a backup, for a few years, like they'll save, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and so forth, however many they want to save. And then we can bring those over at the time of upgrade, or you can choose not to bring them over if you feel like you're comfortable without having them. But we always discuss that during the upgrade process, so you can determine if you want those backups to remain. You can remove companies as well. So down the road, if you said to me, I want to remove that company. So 5 years down the road, I think that company is not needed any longer, I can remove that. You cannot be in the company that you're removing when you remove it. But if you go to your backup, you can just click remove over here, and it'll ask you to specify the modules you're removing. And as long as you remove everything, and you're in the right company, it'll give you this prompt to give you that second look. And then we can say yes, and it'll remove that company, and it will no longer be in my list, in the list. So you don't have to maintain those companies forever. But if you're comfortable, if you want to have a backup, that's always a good idea.
Great. Thank you, Monica. We are getting towards the end of time, but we have a few more questions left. So we want to be respectful of the time for those of you that might have to jump to another call or just, have other plans. So if you do need to leave, we will be sending out the recording of this webinar tomorrow afternoon. SWK will also be sending out Sage 100 end of year resources to your email, as well as putting out our end of year blog post that will have, all the links that you need, the links to this webinar, to the Sage Help Center, to all that year-end information that you might need access to at this time. Monica, are you good to do a couple more questions?
Sure.
So can you remind us one more time what version you need to be on for 1099s?
Sure. A supported version of Sage 100. So not 2018 or 2019, higher than that.
Great. And if you need more specifications there, definitely let us know or reach out to your rep.
Yes, and I can say this too. Let me say one more thing about that. There are occasions where Sage at the last minute, I've seen over the years, will say we're going to support it for 2019, and they'll put out a fix. So if you're not on a supported version and you want to know if that's going to be an option, you can reach out to your consultant as well.
Great. And on that payroll, that new payroll release that's coming out later this month, when that's released, will we be prompted to run an update, like a payroll tax update, or is it a more involved process?
It's a more involved process than that. It's actually an install to your Sage 100 environment. If you have notifications turned on for Sage 100 on your server, you may see someone may see a notification on the server that there's an update available, but it's an install. It's not just a tax update.
Okay. And then our final questions are a few questions about some 1099 error issues, I think. So first one is, they said, I tried to update my 1099 screen, but received an error, updater, vendor code missing, call 701, ... Is there anything I can do to correct this?
I'm sure there is, but I don't know what, but I can look that up and let you know.
Yeah, so if that was your question, we will have someone reach out to you in the next few days to make sure you get that fixed. Our next question is also about 1099s. I'm trying to pull my 1099s through a test file, but I'm receiving an error message that there's no data to print. Do we know what that issue might be?
Yes, so most likely it's an issue of picking the appropriate form. So when you're in accounts payable and you go to that 1099, the very first prompt you see is what form. So you may be in the wrong form. So like if I chose to print dividend here and said accept, I don't have any dividends, I get that. So if that's the error, that could be why. If you have the correct form, you believe you have the correct form, then you'll want to check one of your 1099 vendors and make sure that they're noted on the correct form right here. Those would be the two things I would check first. And then of course, if you still can't get it, just reach out to your consultant here and we can help you with that.
Great. And potentially our last question, maybe one more, but if we run through the 1099 process now to check for missing information, then choose to start over, will the amounts pull over correctly with any checks written between now and when we run again?
Yes, they will.
Great. And then I had a question, and we might need some more clarification here, but someone said, what about the forms? Do we need to order from the website?
So yes.
The 1099 forms.
Yeah, the 1099 forms, you need to get them somewhere. Here's our forms area here. So this link is in the webinar on, it's right here, reports and forms. What forms do I use to print 1095s? And you'll see down here, it'll tell you what you need for both 1099s and W-2s. So 3-part printed federal form in red ink, which Atrix will do that for you, or you may have to, or it'll print in red when you print it because it'll be in red in the Atrix software. But these are all the forms that are needed. You don't have to purchase them through Sage. They're standard. But Sage provides that link in case you want to, which is this sagechecks.com. And you would go to your tax forms, choose 1099s, your software, and it'll show you what forms you'll need. And you can get a bundle here. But to be clear, you don't have to purchase them through Sage if you didn't want to.
Okay, and our final question of the webinar is, what if we are now required to electronically file the 1099s? Do we need to load a payment form in the setup?
Yes. So with Atrix, if you choose to do 1099s, it'll prompt you to create a login, because that login will allow you to go into their website and see any history on your transactions when they send them out and all of those types of things. So if you don't have a login, you'll be prompted to create one, as well as provide your credit card information for payment.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Monica. Super insightful presentation. Thank you to everyone that took some time to join us. We will include all the links Monica referenced during today's presentation in the email tomorrow afternoon that has the recording to the webinar. And like I said, SWK will also be sending out a end-of-year resources email to all our Sage 100 customers, as well as putting out a blog with the same resources. You can always reach out to your SWK rep or reach out to the help desk to get additional help with Sage 100 year end. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.